So everybody, thank you for coming to today's privacy talk. I'm very honored to invite the great colleagues together for the vaccine credentials. I'm happy to join with you, the Lucy and Kaliya, this moment. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. First of all, let me introduce the boss profile. I'm gonna start with Lucy. She's an entrepreneur and business leader, experienced in taking a venture off the ground and leading the growth from 0 to 10 prior to moving to Toronto from Beijing. She single-handedly launched the mainland China office for her first company and then expanded the reach of its entrepreneurship program from 1 to 4 major cities within a year. After that, Lucy joined a tech startup as the 5th member and then oversaw the operation during its early expansion, ensuring the readiness of the necessary infrastructure for client growth from 30 to 1,000 within less than a year. And Kaliya is hyper-connected across the network of organizations working together on developing verifiable credentials. She co-founded the Internet Identity Workshop in 2005 and still produces it twice a year. She has written 2 books about digital identity, and is known widely as the identity woman. So great to have a call with you all. Thank you. So let's anyway move to today's agenda. I think vaccine credential is a global topic. We've been working almost 1.5 years for commitment as a voluntary staff. I want to ask about the one questions with Lucy. We haven't started the CCI. It was a voluntary committee at the first. It's a growing at this moment. So we also working together with LFPH right now. So could you explain us about the LFPH and CCI, what we are doing here?
Thanks for the question, Kohei. Hi, everyone. My name is Lucy Yan, and thanks for the nice introduction. So like Kohei mentioned, I'm based in Toronto, Canada, originally from Beijing. And the reason why I'm taking this question is because I'm the community director of the COVID Credentials Initiative. Like as Kohei mentioned, CCI is a short version of our name. And also we're part of the work nation called Linux Foundation Public Health. So it's a project under like Linux Foundation, probably many of you know, is one of the largest open source technology foundation and consortium. So like, back to your question. So what is CCI and how did we get started? So for the COVID Credentials Initiative, as the name suggests, it's about COVID. At least we started with COVID about almost a year and a half ago, in March 2020, when unfortunately, the COVID become a global pandemic, right? That's when a community of technologists working on credentials, working on digital identity came together, trying to figure out what we had to do to actually as technologists to fight against this pandemic, right? That's how we got started, hoping to kind of come up with some kind of solutions, right? How we can help, using credentials to, bring workers back to workplaces, right? And also bring workers actually to bring people back to their normal life. That's kind of like how we got started. And the reason why, we joined Linux Foundation Public Health later on in the year in 2020 is because as technologists, we realize, right, even though we have a lot of good views and also a lot of skills that can help contribute to addressing the problem, but we still need to work with the broader community, the broader society, actually the stakeholders who are the scientists, right, like the public health people and also like the industry people together, actually fight against this pandemic together. So like Linux Foundation Public Health is a public health project, right, under the Linux Foundation, focusing on leveraging open source technologies to fight against the pandemic. So it's very much aligned with what CCI is trying to do, but also providing a venue for us to connect with the stakeholders, right, especially the public health people that from whom we need to understand actually the problems, right? How we can leverage technologies to solve problems in the right way. So that's how, how we got started. And today, I mean, after we joined Linux Foundation Public Health, like since late last year, we not only be able to just do kind of community conversations and sharing and learning, but also kind of expanded our work from just talking into actually working on the standardization of credentials, right? Vaccine credentials, tax credentials, as well as working with our host organization, LFPH, on actually developing software that can help public health authorities and industry to kind of speed up their process of speeding up software to whatever like credentials, vaccine credentials or test credentials, whatever, like credential related kind of ways of solving some of the public health issues today. So I hope this answers your question and give the audience some context of what we're doing.
Yeah, it was a very small initiative at the first, but it's becoming a very growth. A lot of the people is come to join, and I'm very honored to join it from the first. And I was very curious. This voluntary group has been a very mission driven. Then the Lucy is a lead in this community. I was really inspired from her action, so that's why I'm involved in here. So I want to ask the both, why did you start to work with the CCI? So you both has a very great experience in identity and technical space. And could you give us your ideas with that?
Yeah.
I like Kaliya go first. Yeah.
Yeah, I was also very inspired by Lucy and was very honored to start working with her. Early on, I played this role of supporting CCI, getting connected to the other projects in the verifiable credentials community that I've been stewarding for over a decade. And so that was my role early on. And now, it's been a real opportunity to support the advancement of the technology overall. So I'm glad to have a home base to continue the work that I've been doing for a long time and have an anchor to work with. So I'll turn it over to Lucy to answer.
Awesome.
Jorge, as you can see, like Kaliya is actually like the mission-driven one. Like she has been working on digital identity and credentials for, like she mentioned, over a decade, right? And that's kind of like a great source of inspiration for me, working with someone like Kaliya. So initially, as your introduction suggests, I come from a more kind of business background, right? So initially, what I was looking at is how I can leverage my business expertise, right, to help organize things, right, and communicate things, because there's a lot of good work this community has been doing, and also Kaliya has been leading in the past decade, right? Now, like it's come to a situation where like the good work that has put into technology can actually add value to real world issues, right? And that's where I feel very, very excited about. So I started my career in social entrepreneurship, so like kind of using business, right, to solve like social issues or any kind of issues that for public good is something that I'm passionate about. So it's pretty much like the beginning of my career. That's like why I feel like I'm still very, very kind of excited about like where we see things are going, and also working with someone like Kaliya, right, who's also very mission driven, to make sure that we're using technology in the right way, and also we keep understanding what is going on in the market, right? What is going on in the public health sphere, so that we can all feed that back to the community, the technical community, especially that's the work Kaliya has been doing a lot, and so we can work with the technical technologists to make sure that we're also developing something that turn into like value creation in the near term.
Yeah, awesome. I was been experienced the same in the social sectors. It's a requirement to focus on the public sectors to support with the new technology. I assume that's the vaccine credential has been a very promising areas to make more safe than reliance for the futures. I think so. The next question about the transitions, we've been working almost 1.5 years on this commitment. So the currently how it works, the vaccine credential being used and discussed today this moment.
So I think go ahead,
Go
Lucy.
ahead. No, you go ahead first.
I think, when we started out and we were trying to talk to folks about digitizing these types of records, the public health authorities and others were so focused on more immediate public health needs and more immediate concerns about just like getting the vaccines developed and getting them delivered. And then it was almost an afterthought at the end of like, oh my gosh, how are people going to document them? We'll give them a little paper card. And we're like, that's a good start, but it may not be enough for people to prove in a verifiable way that they actually were vaccinated or they actually had a negative test result. So I think this is sort of a key piece of knowledge our community's been holding and sort of trying to bring to the attention of those who need it and will listen. And now that we're working on trying to reopen international travel, the knowledge that we have in these systems for potentially doing sharing of vaccine information in a privacy preserving way is important. So we're getting more attention because people are on the other side of the intensively hard other problems they were trying to solve first.
Yeah, just to add to what Kaliya said, so initially it's pretty much like the focus has been on actually where the science, right? How we can understand the pandemic and also kind of developing vaccines and just like scientific measures to fight against it, right? And vaccine development is only shows great progress towards the later end of the year last year, right? And actually what started what initially started is not vaccine credentials, it's test results, right? It's like people are getting tested and frequently, and that's when like the international travel space or like how we can leverage the results, like test results, to start reopen, right? That's pretty much like one of the focus conversations like late last year, and until like the vaccine came out, and then like the conversation started to shift a little bit, but only I think not until like I think March and April they're more because they're, even though they're vaccine, right, still not many people were vaccinated early on this year, but towards like like the end of the first quarter and like mid this year, like there are more and more conversations and discussions about vaccine credentials and so many aspects of it, right? Like Kaliya mentioned, like you started off with a card, and because there's not much discussion or thought put into how to do it, so you start with whatever you were using before. And obviously there's a lot of problem with paper. Fraud is like the biggest one, right? And how, and especially with the new variants coming up, and it's just like it makes like getting vaccinated really, really important. And that's when so I think what in short is the way people are responding to this more responsive than proactive, which is understandable, right? There's so many issues like the industry and like the public health authorities have to tackle. But I think the overall approach on credential end is still more like responsive, responding to responding to science, and also using whatever are existing, starting with existing mechanism, existing technology, and also and really quickly realize the scale of COVID is it's not something like today's technology is good enough to cover, right? And in terms of how frequent you actually have to share your vaccine credential, right? It's the vaccine card is not a new concept, right? You already we already have yellow card and other type of vaccines, but we never had to use that in a way that we have to today. And also where you're sharing it, right? I think international using vaccine card to go to do international travel is not it's not a new concept, right? But using vaccine credentials to enter a restaurant, right, to go to an event, right, this is very, very new, right? I mean, at the CCI and LPH, we focus, now we currently focus a little bit more on international travel because it has a lot of kind of like politics, and trust and stuff we need to deal with beyond technology. So that's because our relationship with, with public health authorities with different countries that kind of put us in a unique position to help address this, right? Facilitate kind of an interoperability of different kind of systems. But at the same time, and we're also working, especially at CCI, right? There are a lot of community members who are working on domestic use cases, and more governments, right, are mandating like vaccine certificates, right, where test certificates as a mechanism to enter certain high-risk places, right? We're tackling both of these use cases, but yeah, there's still like a lot of like challenges we're facing today, and I think a lot of like the issues that are not being discussed enough, like in public. And we hope that we can discuss more, like, here, and also like more broadly, and what was like, like the public and private sectors, and also the general public.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to overcome the many issues. Just for example, like in the particle sector, is not the specific agreement to what is the standards. So the technical perspective, the particle perspective at this moment. So the next topic is about the technical issues. I want to talk about these issues with the career. You have many technical experiences so far. The privacy protection is been upcoming the issues in every country. So what is the technical operational issues against the privacy protection right now?
So I think one of the challenges is that it is much easier for developers to make the most simple, easiest kind of credential. Hopefully this is a technical audience, and if not, they can go and look some of this up, but they can take the information in a credential with all of the vaccine information. So your name, your date of birth, which vaccine you got, when you got it, which health agency gave it to you, put it all together and sign it all at once, digitally sign it, and then give it to you as just a plain QR code. So that is cheap and easy, but it also means that every time you want to share that information with another party, you have to share all of that information, even if they don't need all of that information to make a decision. So it's not very sophisticated. And this type of credential is getting widespread adoption because it's easy for developers to implement. But it also creates privacy concerns. Like, it's not the best way to do it for the most privacy. And those type of credentials, we are trying to encourage more people to look at and consider, where each piece of information in the credential is separately signed, and that the individual can choose which of those many pieces of information on their vaccine certificate they want to share. They wouldn't have to share all of them. And another model we're also encouraging is a health pass model, where the vaccine certificate can be consumed by a trusted entity. For example, if you came from one country like India and you traveled to another country like in Europe, the European country could evaluate your vaccine certificate and give you a health pass that says, okay, you could go to bars in our country because you have an equivalent to the things our local citizens have, but that the bar doesn't have to have all that information, and they can't evaluate it. It's not in their expertise. So this health pass model is another model with better privacy characteristics that we're also encouraging countries and we're in the US states to consider adopting and rolling out, because it's got better privacy qualities.
Thank you. In addition, I want to ask you about any existing solutions. For example, the W3C is working on the credential standards. the other frameworks could be used for the privacy protection. Do you have any idea with that?
Yeah, so actually earlier this year, I wrote a paper, which we can put a link in the show notes, called Verifiable Credential Flavors Explained. Sorry, you'll have to edit this out. Okay, so Verifiable Credentials Flavor Explained talks about the different types of W3C verifiable credentials and encourages adoption of the most privacy, the one with the most privacy preserving features. So that's a really good place to look. Another concerning development that we're seeing is some systems that are closed loop, where everybody has to have an app or a service from the same vendor. They're doing their own thing. That means that you can't take a verifiable credential issued by one party that follows the standard and share it with another party that can receive that data in that standard. And so this is another thing we're seeing that's concerning, and why these open standards from the W3C are good and important to follow, and not just to choose a closed loop system where everybody has to go with the same vendor.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Just to add for some less technical audience, I think the way we can look at it is pretty much, how we're doing emails today, right? Now how like Google and Gmail and Outlook can exchange emails, right? And what we've learned from COVID is like your health data, is not only going to be used for healthcare purposes, right? Like data are kind of, you're carrying data across domains, like from health, like to travel, like, to kind of everyday life, right? So how can that be done, right? In a way, because you're using so many different kind of apps every day, right? You're probably going to use that one certificate, so many places. Hopefully that won't be the case soon, but we do see that kind of like use now in COVID, right? How we can make sure all different kind of systems and software can actually, talk to each other, right? And can recognize a piece of credential. That's why, what we call open standards, right? It's pretty much there's a standard everyone's building on, right? You can build your software, right, on it, but as long as everyone is following a certain standard, you don't have to worry about, if your credential is going to be recognized or not. So that's the kind of simple idea.
Yeah, I think we have to consider as well the interoperabilities in each of the technical solutions. We're gonna talk about these dialogues in this moment, and open source community will be empowers the new technologies for the futures. So I want to explore with you about the near and long term, the CCI and LFPH landscape. So Lucy, you have any specific idea for this?
Yeah, I think for now, so obviously Linux Foundation Public Health has a broader public health mandate, right? And CCI, we started with COVID, and we're part of Linux Foundation Public Health. We certainly don't see our mission end with COVID. We're already our mission statement already very, very clear that we want to enable the kind of the use of interoperable and privacy preserving credentials for all kind of public health use, right? So that's our kind of long-term goal. And obviously, like COVID is now like our first use case where we want to make sure we're getting the market onto the right path, right? At least first recognize where is the right way, what is the right way to go, right? And help direct the market towards like the right direction, and then can apply that to other healthcare and public health areas. Actually, we already got some interest from like some kind of long-term kind of partnership with Bill. They are very much interested not only in COVID, but also see how what we're building today can be more broadly used like for future kind of public health like use, right? So that's kind of our long term. And for the near term, obviously we're still not over with COVID, right? And you mentioned like in the interoperability piece, we do see that, and global interoperability is something that we're going to keep focusing on, right? How we can kind of facilitate convergence on several like major standards, right? And also help those standards evolve to like a better place. Because we all like, once you start implementing, you will realize, there are drawbacks of all existing standards, which is understandable, right? Pretty much everything in it kind of arrives in the middle of COVID. So like our goal now is how we can help, people converge on like some of the major and also promising ones, right? And then that's like on the technical and also on the kind of the political end, how we can support countries, right, to actually understand how to build trust with each other. Because the biggest challenge on actual interoperability is not like you're using the same technical standards. It's already challenging enough, but what's even more challenging is how we can navigate the policy aspects of credentials, right? Because every country are implementing different vaccines, right, and recognizing different vaccines, right? Which means the rules to enter a country varies, right? How we can help the countries understand the rules and policies of another country so that they know that am I gonna able to stop someone from another country, right? That's like the broader kind of like interoperability kind of like like mandate where we're having we're having for ourselves today.
Yeah, I think some countries try to reopen the travel to the multinational collaborations. So Kaliya, you have any ideas for needed the multinational collaboration reopen the market?
Yeah, I think Lucy spoke to the key challenge of how do we build not just the common formats, but the underlying trust infrastructure so that when somebody from country A presents a credential to country B, why should country B believe it? And so this is, it's sort of a technical and governance interoperability challenge that is above the pure credential layer and those formats to the meaning layer. And, we're working on a project called the Global COVID Certificate Network to support countries sharing lists of who's trusted to issue credentials in their domain. And hopefully other countries will believe them and accept their credentials on the other end. But I think really it's global cooperation and participation in forums like ours to learn from each other and to co-create the systems that we're working on building.
I think one good example is the EU digital COVID certificate, right? So the EU not only built something for their own member state, they also start to kind of let other third countries actually use their like specs, which is open, right? They have like open specifications and open source implementations with and not only that, but also they're trying to include third-party countries in their governance framework as well, right? How they can participate actually in their trust model is another thing that we see, like EU is playing a very, very good role in facilitating, right? We're hoping that there are kind of more kind of collaboration like that, right? And also that's what we're trying to facilitate, right? We know like it's not like you won't be able to have only one cluster, right? That's not how the world works today, but how we can facilitate the formation of clusters, right? Small and big clusters based on the synergies. I think a lot of the political synergies and also technical synergies, right, among countries, and which I think more likely to happen if I think there's some kind of historical relationship, right, between the countries where there's some kind of geo-specific kind of relationship, like if you're closer, right, to each other. So that's what we're exploring. And as Kaliya mentioned, we do have our COVID global COVID certificate network, which is pretty much no matter you're big or small, right? We want to provide you a mechanism to disclose information so that other people can find you, and then decide if they're going to trust you, right? Because that's kind of like there's a lack of that kind of mechanism when we're talking about truly reopening international travel and reopening borders.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping to continuously talk in this theme with you but unfortunately the time has come. So could you give a message for the listeners, the both of you? So could you start from the Kaliya for the listeners?
Sure. As was mentioned in my introduction, I facilitate an event called the Internet Identity Workshop. And the good thing is it's coming up in a couple of weeks. So I would invite anybody who would like to participate to join us. We're very friendly. And also, if you're interested in our work around COVID, the CCI community is very welcoming as well.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah, I think my message is, there's a lot going on in the world. It's certainly confusing, right? And what I would recommend is, before jumping into anything, whether like you're a kind of government or you're a private sector organization looking to implement something, talk to us. We're open for conversations. That's what we're doing every day. So we're hoping that we can provide you kind of a better idea what is going on in the world, right? And what can probably better suit you than others. So with that information, it will be a lot easier and also less expensive to make a decision today, because we are seeing a lot of companies where, especially in the private sector, are just jumping on to something that they don't even know what that is. We're just, developing something, from scratch by themselves when there's so many, things already out there, right? So it's certainly not like the best way of spending your time and money, especially, everyone knows it's a very challenging time in the middle of COVID. So we're here to help. So we're open community. So reach out to us, and then Kohei, you have our contact information. I'm happy to share, with the audience. So if we can be of any help to you, just reach out to us.
Thank you for the great message for us. Then, yeah, I'm very honored to have a call with you this moment. Then happy to succeed in the powers of the open source community for the futures. Then the vaccine credential, we can meet each others if the credential has been spreading, then we can use it as normal. So that's a very great honor to have a call this moment. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.